Hey guys, Trevin here. Sitting inside of a local motors rally fighter today. Say that 10 times fast. We picked this thing up here probably less than a year ago, last summer probably, and we found it on Facebook Marketplace, and we bought it from a guy who picked it up from Bring a Trailer. And so we ended up with this thing, and it is awesome. So these cars were built to, as far as I know, to kind of compete in that Baja scene. They're rear-wheel drive. They've got an LS3 in them. And yeah, this thing rocks. It's you can tell that they scrounged parts from everywhere, and the more I learn about this, the more interesting it gets. So there's a particular fellow on TikTok that I've been following who used to work for Local Motors. They've since went out of business, and he talks all the time about how they tried to source, the speedo cluster and the door handles and different things. And so yeah, super interesting. So like the door handles, depending on what gen it is either going to be out of a Honda like Accord or a Honda Del Sol. The gauge cluster is out of I believe a Mustang or a Ford Escort or something. But you can really see the different components and the clamshell for the steering wheel, kind of how this thing was hodgepodge together. But they ran a LS3. We actually blew this one up, and it took on some water. So we were doing a video for the Sway brand, and I was running it through a puddle. Again, no big deal. You could do this with any other rig on the planet. And by about the third run through the puddle, it just... And turns out that the airbox has got a lip on the top, and or a slot on the top, and so it was letting water inside this airbox, and it filled up, and there's no drain holes or anything until it finally just ingested a bunch of water and blew a hole out the side of the block. Well, when we pulled the block out, we checked the number on it, and or the serial number and everything, and it is a part number that is GM crate and transmission combo. And so we ended up just picking the engine up separately. We actually went a little more radical with the engine with some bigger cams. Out of Jags, but yeah, you could see they were discontinued online. GM had the part number, and it was a mated engine transmission combo. And so we threw that back in here, and just kind of got this thing back up and running, and had a few little things that were kind of falling apart on it, but overall the fit and finish is okay. Again, you can tell that this thing, they made a limited number of them. That this looks like a small factory of guys that are trying to build something with off-the-shelf parts, and so a lot of the stuff in here is just off the shelf. It's an automatic, and it drives, and it does everything that a car's supposed to do. What I don't like about it is it feels a little squirrely on the highways when you're cornering, and if you try to push this thing off-road in any way at all, actually running it through its paces, it wants to endo everywhere. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. You hit a jump or something, and the front end is perfect, and then the back end hits, and now you feel like you're endoing. But yeah, let me run you guys through all the different little quirks and features on this thing. So the first thing to note when you get into the cockpit here is kind of how low in the seat you sit. So I'm putting you right at about here. So this is right at about head height right here. And you notice that we can't see the hood. We're kind of looking skyward. Now what's interesting is if I brake really hard, this whole front end just dips down hard. And if I get on it, we're looking into the sky again. So kind of an interesting seated position here in the cockpit. The seats, they go forward and backwards, not a lot of up and down or anything like that. As I said before, it looks like they pulled the speedo cluster out of a Escort or something. And of course it's branded Local Motors. Real basic clamshell for the steering wheel. You know, it has a cruise control. Again, this is an add-on feature that's here. We've got an oil pressure gauge, and then we've got trans temp. Your basic headlights and windshield washers, and then your headlight, actually your running lights and your and fog lights and everything are here. This is just the fog lights and the grille. And then we come over here, we've got you know, your CD player or radio, and then we've got a kind of a smorgasbord of switches here. Rear trunk hatch, lock and unlock. We have accessory, which doesn't do much except, I think, give power to this 12-volt lighter here. Rear defrost. We've got a fan, auxiliary fan for engine temp. Front running lights, and then we've got our rear strobe light and our roof rack. Then of course you have your basic, and I'm assuming these are like red dot climate controls, and then you've got your window motor switches on each side here. When we got the car, the cup holders were all broke out of it. We 3D printed some new cup holders. This thing was cracked in half, so we repaired that. You can kind of see how low you sit in the car compared to your passenger. And then if you ever wanted to get in the back of this thing, good luck. You know, this thing almost touches the back seat. It's pretty much unusable. Then up here we've got a couple of dome lights, nothing crazy. One orange, one red. And then, you know, and then as far as fit and finish, you know, we kind of have some wires hanging out here. This roll bar, when we got it, you know, super rattly and just needed to be tightened overall. And again, it's an older vehicle, so of course there's that. And then you can see it's kind of has these Honda style door handles. But then when we pop out of the rig here, I'll show you just kind of the walk around. Again, fit and finish. Interestingly enough, you know, they used spray foam, as one does here, on a lot of the pieces, I think, for insulation and keeping it quiet. Using AE alloy wheels and Goodyear Wrangler tires. But I believe this is a Honda Accord door handles. And yeah, kind of the view from inside. Spare tire in the back. But yeah, so overall, this thing's really cool. It's fun as a novelty vehicle. I really think that, you know, I think these came out in, you know, mid 2000s, and I think they were to compete in the side-by-side world. And, you know, the Razor was around in 08, and as, you know, things move forward in the side-by-side world, they just kept getting wider and wider and faster. And now you have things like the X3 that just absolutely decimate, that are fully enclosed cabs and everything else. And ultimately, I think it kind of put these guys out of business. I just think it's the industry. And I think that this was all the technology at the time for something that you could Baja and have the AC running and the stereo blasting at the same time. But I just think technology progressed and these kind of became obsolete. But it's still cool nonetheless. And, you know, the LS3's got a ton of power and sounds great. And it's super fun to bomb around, and people love this thing. We've had to get a little bit creative on some of the parts, suspension components and stuff, just to remanufacture, since you can't get them anymore. And it kind of, you know, as light as it is, it's still kind of a boat. So, you know, like I say, when you hit the brakes and this thing dips down, it dips hard. But yeah, so I'll throw a little video up and you can kind of see this thing in action. So enjoy.